Okay, so the next section that we need to do is create our circuit underneath our top section. Now our circuit is going to be carrying electricity from our battery pack, which is going to be attached onto there, and it's going to be carrying the battery power through our circuit, and you'll see here that there's a gap. When we're connecting up that gap, which is our switch, which is on the top here, that's what that bit's for, it's going to be connecting up the circuit, and as that connects, it's then going to spin the motor, which is going to make our wheel go round. So the first thing we need to do is to attach on our copper tape. Now copper is an excellent conductor of electricity, so that's why we're using it, and we're going to be sticking that onto these grey sections here. Alright, so the first thing to do is actually just to measure out and cut it to the correct length. Alright, so that's about there, so I'm going to snip it there. That's for that one. And then we've got this one here. That's there. Oh. And then we've got enough there. But I'm actually going to make that a little bit shorter because I want some for my switch. But you'll have enough in your pack to do both. So I'm actually just going to make that about that size. That's fine. Okay, so then after you've cut it to the right size, you then need to peel off the sticky back. Now it's like sticky, like double-sided tape really, so we're peeling off that section. It goes a bit curly, you need to be careful that they don't stick to itself. I'm just going to stick that along that grey area there. And we'll do the same thing for this one. That's where nails come in handy, so if you've not got any nails, work with your partner who hopefully has. Not great on film, is it, when these things happen? Okay. And finally, you need to make sure that you've got some on the back of your switch, and I'll show you where that needs to go in a moment. So I've got this one here for the back of my switch. So it's on the back here. You'll notice that there's that same grey panel. I'm going to stick that across there like that. Okay. Now, next we're going to attach on our battery pack. Now you'll notice on the top of your battery pack you've got an on-off switch. Now that on-off switch has to go on the top because when we're putting this section on, we've actually got a gap there. That's where we cut out that square, and that allows us to switch on that on and off switch. So what I'm going to do for now is just to attach that on with blue tack. If we're sticking it on with blue, then it means that we're not going to be able to replace our batteries, which you actually get into from the back. So I think blue tack's probably the best thing to use for the time being. You can always make it more permanent later on when you put your batteries in. So I'm just going to put some blue tack on there to secure it. Now make sure when you're soldering that there is no battery in your battery pack. It's very dangerous to be doing it with a battery inside, so make sure there's no battery inside. I'm just going to stick that on so it's nice and steady when I'm soldering. Okay, now we've got our red positive wire and our black negative wire. And it's quite clear on these instructions here where they need to go. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using what we call solder, which is a very soft metal. It's got a very low melting point, and what that allows us to do is it will melt onto the tip of this wire here and onto that copper there, and that means that we're going to get a nice solid metal joint which is going to carry up our power from the battery pack around our circuit. Now when you're soldering, the thing you need to remember is that on the inside of the solder that you can't see, there's something called flux, and that flux, without getting too technical, is really important, and you need to make sure that flux comes into contact with the wire and with that copper there. Now I've got my soldering iron here. Now you'll have been through lots of safety information with your teacher on how to solder safely, so I'm just going to talk you through that. Now obviously this is very hot. It's attached to the power, and so this is very hot. Under no circumstances should you be touching this tip. Also, that tip will melt things, okay, and it will burn things. So do not touch it to anything apart from to your work. If you do happen to burn yourself, make sure that you tell your partner and you go and run onto the tap as quickly as possible, and then you make sure that the teacher knows. Alright, I've got my holder here which I'm going to put my soldering iron into every time I'm not using it. Okay, so what we're going to do first of all is we're going to, and it's important that you've got your partner to help you with this, okay, you're going to put the tip of your soldering iron on top of both the copper wire and the metal. Okay, and what we're doing is we're going to introduce the solder, and you can see that it's automatically melting. I'm introducing the solder in, holding that wire in place, give it a blow so that it cools nice and quickly, and they should now be joined together, which they are. Okay, you need to be very careful. Obviously these wires are plastic coated, and that plastic will melt if it comes into contact with the soldering iron. Okay, so I've got my red wire attached there. I'm now going to do the black one. Okay, in fact what I'll do is I'll probably just turn that around so that you can see more easily. So I'm going to attach it onto there. Obviously yours will come all the way down there and you're attaching it onto here. So the next thing to do is, if you've got your partner, they could be holding it. Actually I'm going to do it that way around, I think. I'm not sure how I can do this actually with one hand. Can my cameraman hold the negative wire please in place? Excellent, thank you very much, Mr. Cameraman. So I'm heating up that wire there, making sure I'm nowhere near his fingers, and I'm then introducing my solder into that joint, and you can see that smoke. Oh! And that's joined on. Okay, the next thing to do are our other wires here. Okay, so I'm going to use, I've got red that's coming up here, my positive wire, so it's positive up here, that's my red one. So I'm going to do the same thing. Maybe what I could do is balance them on top of each other. So heating up my joint first of all, and then my solder on there. Oops, sometimes the solder gets stuck, and you just need to reheat that joint. There we go. Okay, and then the same thing with this black one. The negative one, I'm going to do the same thing because that worked quite well just then. Hopefully it works again the same. So I've got my solder, I'm introducing into the heat of that joint. Okay, so I'm just heating up that joint first of all, holding that in place, and then I've got my solder which I'm introducing. Okay, so that then is what your circuit should look like. Now what we're going to do is we're going to attach on the ends of these to our motor. Now this is a bit tricky. I suppose it's no trickier than what we've been doing so far, so if you've done this already, you're doing very well. Need to make sure those are bending up in that direction so they're towards where our motor is going to be. Sometimes these break off and you just need to resolder them back on, that's no problem. So what we're going to do is, you'll notice, this is why it's important that those little metal pieces are sticking out the sides here. Okay, so that's why it was important that we joined those on in the right direction. What we're going to do is, if that one's on that side, then to join this red one onto here. It's difficult for me to do this upside down actually, I'm going to have to turn it around, sorry. can work out how it's going to go. Okay, now so what we're doing is we're attaching these onto here. Now you can solder these on or you can twist them on. If you've got enough wire, I suggest you twist them because it makes it much easier. And then you can always solder it on afterwards if you feel like it needs to be more secure. You might need to just strip that wire a little bit more so that you've got some more of the silver wire showing. I've done that already, so that's easy. So you can see I'm just feeding it through that tiny little hole. Come on, up it comes. Okay, using my other hand just to kind of bend it around so you can see it's now hooked in. And what I'm doing is I'm just going to press that in place. Might be an idea to put some solder on there actually. If we attach them on first of all, you can see that that's now through that hook and that's quite steady and secure. We're just going to do the same to the other side. And pushing it through that little hole and pulling it around. That's what I said about it being a bit fiddly, but you've all got smaller fingers than me probably, so it should be easy. You can always get some small pliers as well. We'll have some pliers in the workshop that you can use just to secure that. So you can see that they are now attached. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put that upside down back onto here. And just push those wires out of the way. And again, maybe just using another piece of glue tack just to attach all of the corners on. And we're ready to go. Okay, so at this point I've now attached the top of my Wheel of Fortune to the base, which has got your circuit attached. I've done that just by using a little bit of blue tack on these two corners and onto the top of the battery pack here as well, so that's pretty secure now. I've also put some batteries into my battery pack. Now I no longer need my soldering iron, so I'm going to take this away and put it away safely. In order to put it away safely, you should always carry it in the holder like this. Okay? The reason we're doing that is because the holder itself is going to be hot because it's been in contact with the hot soldering iron, and it means that if you do happen to knock into anybody, you're not going to knock into anybody by accident like that, which is actually going to do them a lot of harm, and the same thing with your holder. So if you're carrying it like this, it's much safer. So I'm just going to take that away. Make sure it's unplugged. Okay, so next up, in order to finish, now this is where you can get quite creative. So your Wheel of Fortune can be decorated however you want it to be, in terms of your design ideas and the work that you've been doing over the last couple of weeks. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to attach on the wheel. Now first of all, I've got this ready already. So you've cut out a wheel, alright, and you need a hole in here that's big enough for this spike to go through. You're not attaching, it needs to go on and it needs to be quite loose. So you should be able to push it through and you should be able to spin it round. Now I've put a bit of blue tack on there. You can use hot glue gun, and we're just going to stick that on there. Now I don't want it, like I said, I don't want it to stick on to here. I'm sticking it onto the back there of the motor because we don't want the wheel to spin. What we want to spin is our arrow. So I've got my arrow here, and again there's a little hole through there, but that's quite a tight hole. I've just made that using a pencil, and I've got a bit of blue tack. Again, you can use hot glue, but I've not got hot glue here at the moment, so we'll just use a bit of blue tack. And then hopefully, when we press our switch, oh, it's not on, that would help. That's then spinning our arrow around. So it's obviously up to you what you're going to do, what your design is going to be on here, and I suggest you, well, you will need to decorate that before you stick it on, and you'll also need to decorate this before you stick that on too. So that is how you make your Wheel of Fortune.